One of the other toxic things that you can do is privately
Yeah.
disagree, even if it's subconsciously undermine the outcome. It's really important to also create a culture where we actually decide, hey, in this room, we have healthy debate and healthy discussion. And so you're not helping if you're going, that's never going to work. Or we tried that 10 years ago. Have the conviction to bring up those things in the spirit of taking the business closer to the end goal.
My guest today is Jessica Serrano. She is the Chief Marketing Officer at Bagel Brands, and before then, a pretty stacked career. A director at Taco Bell for a few years, and then Burger King for a couple years. And then we first met when you were the CMO at Dig In, and based in New York. So I've had the privilege to have sort of courtside seats and to a lot of your growth and career evolution. I have to say, and I'm not just saying this to blow smoke, but you're one of my favorite marketing leaders because you have intentionally or unintentionally found this unique way to, and I'm only speaking from personal experience, found a way to equally make people feel understood and heard and taken care of, and at the same time make them feel, challenged beyond what they thought possible in their own career, and ultimately that contributes to a lot of up leveling across the board. So I'll stop there, Jessica. You're one of my favorite. I love the way you play the game. Welcome to Table Talks.
Hi, Caleb. Thanks for having me and thanks for the kind words. I appreciate it. It's been fun being on this journey with you over the last few years.
It has been fun. It's been very eye opening for everyone involved. So, Jess, there's a few things that we've talked about in the past, and some of them quite recently that I thought would be interesting for our audience to hear, and just to kind of explore the way you're playing the game through these three different topics that I'll share shortly here, and just to help us understand like how your understanding and execution within these ideas have evolved over the longer term in your career and even more recently. So if I can set the stage here, there's one sort of professional challenge that was interesting to you and is interesting to you right now, and this is this idea of finding the balance between leading through whether it be conviction, your own personal belief in terms of how things should be done, but finding that balance with collaboration. So exploring the intersection of personal conviction and I know how to do this and how we should do this. Isn't this what we should do? Versus collaborating and empowering, getting the whole team. So I want to dig into that a little bit. The second thing is a positive shift for you recently around the topic of team accountability and bringing people to an understanding that we should do what we do through a thing that's more important than just completing the task or completing the executional area, but how can we nest the work we do into something more congruent with enterprise value, with the P&L. So accountability. And then the last one from a positive shift standpoint is the idea of how important it is as a leader to foster a culture where people feel permitted to fail. People feel okay to put themselves out there in the good, bad, and ugly form, and that the idea of failure is celebrated and intentional. So, if it's okay, those are three things that I want to kind of explore with you.
Yeah, I love those topics. Let's start with the first one. So you were talking about conviction versus collaboration. And what came up for me in hearing you pose that question was I was thinking about I spent a big percentage of my marketing career kind of cutting my teeth at Yum Brand, specifically at Taco Bell. And Yum really trains its leaders through, at the time they had a CEO, David Gibbs, who wrote a book, I think it was called Taking People With You. And so the culture was very much about collaboration. And so I really learned how to be a marketer in an environment where I was leading cross-functional teams as the marketing lead. And so I was working with a team of folks. We all were looking towards the same goal of delivering the plan for the brand. But, my ops partner was there going, well, how do we make sure we protect speed of service? And my finance partner was thinking about, how do we protect margins? And so going through that exercise week after week and presenting in front of leadership teams that really carried all of those at times conflicting priorities helped me to figure out my way with being both collaborative, but also leading with conviction.
Yeah.
And so now, as I am in an executive role, I've had years of experience that has really trained my gut. And so the conviction is stronger than ever, right? Because that gut is also data. And so it's easy for me
Right.
to sit in a meeting and hear an idea and go, that. And my instinct is like, stop talking about everything else. Like, we need to go chase that down. And I still need to kind of come back to helping make sure that we thought through it and that everybody's voice has been heard in that process. But when collaboration can become a weakness is if it leads to compromise that waters something down so much that now it's really not serving any of its purposes. So that's something that I'm continually, navigating is how do I lead with conviction that inspires others? How can I also be supportive and listening and managing through the other consideration?
Yeah. When there comes this moment of time where the data matches the intuition, and you know, when you do a self check with yourself, that it is time to say, guys, this is the way we're going. What happens when there's a fear around what that might cost the team in terms of their belief in you that collaboration is something that is valued?
Yes, and it really ends up coming down to like getting to the underlying why, because a lot of times if the data and the intuition reflect that there's a viable path and there's still some sort of lingering hesitation, it's like, what are we afraid of? What's really holding us back here? And so it's figuring out like what are the right places to get the answer to that. Because sometimes when you're in a meeting setting, people can say one thing and you're like, okay, I think, if I got under that, there's probably something else that's really a
Yeah.
secret motivator there. And so is it about, getting with somebody offline and understanding, their objections. And so I've seen this play out so many different ways in my career. I remember when I was really early on as a junior marketer, I was on one of these cross-functional teams and I had an ops partner who had decades of experience over me, and we just like kept clashing every time we were trying to like design a program. And I remember sharing with my leader, oh my gosh, I just like cannot figure out how to work with this person. And she really inspired me to get curious. She was like,
Hmm.
have you really like spent any time trying to understand like how she would approach it? And so instead of kind of always coming to those meetings ready to like defend myself, kind
Yeah.
of take a seat back and go like, well, what do you think? Or how would you do it? And so sometimes it's like if we all want the same thing, if we can remind ourselves of that, then we can ask different questions. It's about like taking that beat to get curious when you feel defensiveness rising up, and then by the end of that that stint in my career of working with that person, we worked so great together because I finally understood like what her underlying were and how to make sure that she had a voice in projects. Sometimes it meant like running something by her offline first so she had a chance to think about it. So yeah, those are some of the hard lessons learned along the way.
Are there moments where collaboration is the right thing to lean into, even in the scenario in which like you have the answer key to the test? So, like, what do you do, and when is it right to forego the answer is true and save probably a lot of time?
Funny you bring that up because I had a mentor recently kind of hold up a mirror to me on that exact subject where I was like, I know I'm right. And I was just like venting about, being frustrated about a project that others weren't seeing the same way as me. And he said to me, he's like, you can, my words on his like drag people along and muscle your way through it. And if you're right, then sure, everybody cheers us afterwards. But gosh, if you're wrong, you're relying on the good character of that person to like not rub it in your face later. And that
Uh,
really gave me pause about like, there really is value sometimes in slowing down and like not taking the most direct path, but the most collaborative one, which is saying like, okay, let's test it, even though I'm like, I don't need to test it. But the KPI then of that test is different, right? It's not proving out this thing for me. It is making sure that other people have had the chance to catch up to the whys. It's reducing the risk. So there are legitimate reasons why not to always take the most direct path if it
yeah.
helps you to get somebody in lock arms with you along the way.
Yeah. So it's kind of like collaboration as a hedging technique, and sometimes. Like, what if you're not completely convicted? You're like 80%.
Yeah.
Is that another example of where collaboration makes sense to maybe check your blind spots or
There's so many variables at play. I think, it also depends on how aggressive is the goal, how much room do we have to go slow versus move quickly.
yeah,
And, I do believe that relationships, there's deposits and withdrawals, right? When you're evaluating where to lean in and where to say to someone like, hey, I am not asking you whether or not we should do this. I am asking you to disagree and commit with me. But if you in the span of a relationship, if you've made investments or you've leaned in with somebody, they're more likely to give when this when the stakes matter. So
yeah.
it's there's no one right answer. It's constantly thinking about how are you weighing each decision such that in the totality of a relationship, there's give and take.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. What happens for you if the person on the other side of the table is the one with the deep and unrelenting conviction on a topic and you have an opinion, a strong one, but you're perhaps not as convicted? Is it I'll follow you or is it do I play the role now of pressure tester?
Yeah, and I think it goes both ways, right? You have to be the partner that you'd want. And so the position that I try and take is like take a position but hold it lightly, right? So if I have an opportunity to express, here are my concerns, and we end up in a place that differs from my recommendation, it's like, okay, then like now I'm committed and I'm going to support you to figure it out. I'm not going to say I told you so on the other side of it. But when I have that position, I find that people are then more receptive to like suggestions of, well, what if we didn't do it all the way
Right.
to, full system? What if we tested it? What if we only did it for 6 weeks instead of 12 weeks, right? So there's levers that both parties can give and take on, but ultimately, once we decide, you got to get in the boat and row. And I think that is the ultimate test of a good leader and a good peer. One of the other toxic things that you can do is privately
Yeah.
disagree and then even if it's subconsciously undermine the outcome. And so it's really important to me to also create a culture where we actually decide, hey, in this room we have healthy debate and healthy discussion. And so you're not helping if you're going, that's never going to work, or that's not my idea. We tried that 10 years ago. Like have the conviction to bring up those things in the spirit of taking the business closer to the end goal.
Yeah.
But then, once we've weighed all the considerations, that's where the commitment part comes.
Right. And that's a wild concept for like as a marketing leader, you're going to be working with a combination of brand new cutting their teeth
Yeah.
to well experienced. And for some of the folks that are earlier in their career, that's a fundamental thing to understand and it is not straight lines. Let's talk about accountability and the role, the responsibility we have as marketing leaders with our team to reframe what accountability means. Riff on that for me.
Think it's really easy to get bogged down with the list of all of the things that you do in your job. Every single person has, a long list of tasks that they have to do to get their job done. But ultimately, as a leader, my responsibility to anybody on my team is to be really clear on what the business KPIs are, right? And then how are the activities that you're doing supporting that? And sometimes those correlations are more direct than others. Some roles are just inherently more support than direct
Right.
outcomes. And in that case, then I think it's really important to also measure like inputs versus outputs. So,
Hmm.
if you're in a role that's more support, what are the KPIs that demonstrate that you're spending time on the right things? And so a signal to me when this is not working is when you're having like performance conversations with people and they're sharing all of the activity that they did.
Yeah.
And anytime I hear like a laundry list of activity, I want to bring us back to like, and what was the outcome? And if
Right.
we're able to answer that question, then like, good, we're on the same page, we're moving in the right direction. If not, then we've got to get back to the KPIs. And so I think it's really important that regardless of like what org you're in and what your HR, team says about your performance conversations, for me as a principal, it's like quarterly, we should be looking at how's the business performing? How are you supporting those initiatives? And then that's separate to how are you growing as a professional development, but being really clear on are the things you're doing tied to business outcomes? And if not, let's recalibrate.
Right. And that's a great opportunity, right? Because as a leader where if we make the the people that we work with open their eyes to the idea that you're not being judged by the number of things you do. I guess that indirectly signals that you can do less things
Oh, yeah.
or more things. I don't care about the things. So use your creativity and your ingenuity and your to maybe do less things, but accomplish something greater. So, but that's the challenge, right? Is that we've been trained, growing up, that more is better, more is productive, things are done. So how do you see that, and how do you see this as an opportunity for you to apply your leadership?
So, I think if I were a junior marketer listening to this conversation and thinking like, oh my gosh, I have so much on the plate, I would reframe that as, if you're feeling that way, this is also a great framework to manage up too, and say, here are the things that I need to be working on that are going to be the highest impact. And if there are other things on the list that aren't contributing to that and still need to be done, like, we should talk about the scope. I would just encourage anybody that whenever you're talking about scope, it's not useful to talk to a leader about like, I've got so much on the plate. It's where they can be most supportive of you is when you're really specific about, this is my highest and best use,
Yeah.
and what are the roles of these other things? Are these activities that nobody should be doing, that somebody should be doing, but not me, because it's taking away from the parts that have the highest impact? So I really think that this framework not only supports, a leader thinking about how to manage the team, but should also be empowering to a person who's navigating all of that. And I would
Well,
say for myself, going from a CMO role of overseeing 30, 40 locations to now 4 brands, 1,000 locations, the scope changed tremendously for me. And so I am actively exercising those muscles and reminding myself that more is not more. And so how do I always make sure that I am using my time to its highest and best use in support of the business, and
yeah.
having the right conversations about delegation and, support, so that we can deliver the plan and do it in a way where, we're not stretched,
Yeah.
present company included.
That constraint of like 100 times more stores, did that contribute to your ability to lean into the concept of accountability to an outcome versus like the constraint created the opportunity to evolve?
Very much so. Ways that it stretched me is that I just cannot review or be involved in things to the same level of detail that I had been before. And so the last thing that anybody wants is to approve something or proceed with something, and then I come 3 months later and go, wait, I never saw that. So what helps to avoid that is, are we all aligned on the plan? And then if so, that gives the team the guardrails and the agency to go and make decisions within that. And so I think, your other question about moving fast, it kind of is tied into that. So in order to empower a team to be outcome oriented and not task oriented, it also means I have to trust them that I'm not reviewing things, and that sometimes they may make decisions that aren't exactly the way that I would, but as long as it's oriented to the goal, or we're learning, or they're able to demonstrate the outcomes of it, I have
Yeah,
to be okay with that.
totally. Do you have a recent example where an understanding and alignment to accountability to an enterprise value KPI has resulted in team members sort of rising to the occasion or experiencing a form of success that they may not have tasted before?
Yeah, so we are opening lots of new bakeries this year, and at a rate that is far greater than what it's been in the past. And so what that means is that historically, a new bakery opening is considered kind of a development or real estate team function. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's actually a cross-functional one, right? Because we open a new bakery and ops has to train people, and marketing needs to make sure that people actually come through the door. And so it's easy for that to become a task check off of like, okay, it opened, we turned on the paid media, we sent the now open email, we sent them the kit with the
Right.
stickers, right? And like, now our work here is done. And um, a reframe that I wanted to bring to this team was, well, what if your work is not done until we've actually ensured that the store, and in our business, the bakery, is hitting underwriting, right? So when we build a forecast to how much a new opening should perform. And so that was a different mindset shift, because normally it's easy to think like, oh, well, that's a development team KPI. And it's like, well, not really, because the development team, yes, they pick the site and they make sure it's on the right side of the road. And there's a lot that they decide up until those doors open, but there's a lot that happens on the marketing end as well of, have we really understood this DMA, the nuance of it? Are we talking to parents? Are we opening in summer versus winter? How does
Interesting.
that change the opening approach? And so when you shift the goal away from store opens, I send the things, I'm absolved, to, hey, we all own the performance of the store. I really saw a shift in the behaviors. And that's like so rewarding to see people go, oh, that's the goal. Great. I would approach it completely differently if I knew that I had a number that I was accountable to.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I want to double click on this for those listening, because what I took away is that it's almost like when you say shift in the goalposts, you're talking about pushing the definition of done further down the value journey, so
And
that what used to be their terminal end of the result really just becomes the middle, and it better contextualizes kind of what they're working on, doesn't it?
yeah, and it also, you end up with a sense of accomplishment. If anybody's ever been mentored on like how to write your resume, they're always telling you like, make sure you have like hard numbers in your resume. Well, yeah, that's ultimately right. Like that's how you get there, is if your resume is riddled with tasks, you don't feel as accomplished. But if you're able to actually say the outcomes that the activity did generated, you feel a sense of ownership from that. And
Yeah.
so it's been really rewarding to see people respond to that shift with energy.
Yeah, I love it. I'm taking away the definition of done idea and pushing
All
it
right.
down. That's super helpful. Let's end off with this concept. What do you mean? It's okay to screw up. What do you mean it's okay to fail? Like, am I going to get fired? Like, help me understand. How do you create this feeling of it's okay to, permission to fail? What's been your experience?
Really mean it when I say let's fail fast. And so, how I help build trust, because it's important that you create an environment where people understand that, okay, it's okay to make mistakes, is by resetting the expectation that, hey, in order for us to move fast and hit aggressive goals, I want us to feel like we've pushed it too far sometimes, or stretched outside of our boundaries. And so the way that I see this come up with my teams is, for example, somebody on the social team will bring me an idea and like, I'm kind of nervous about it because we've never done something like this before. And I want to quiet that, like, well, what if I put it on social and it doesn't perform? It's like, let's assess the risk of that. Like, what's the worst that happens is we learn from it and we don't do it again. And so through the repetition of people bringing forward ideas and hearing, I would do this if I wasn't scared of the consequence. When we talk about the consequence and we size it, then we can all decide that that's a risk that we're willing to take. And then on the other side of it, all I want is, what did we learn from it? Are we doing more of it, or are we never doing it again? And as
Yeah.
long as I keep that part of the commitment, it continues to build that trust with people that, like, okay, this is a place where, are we accountable? Yes. Should we be doing things carelessly or thoughtlessly? No. But at the end of I'll give you an example. One, in my last role at Dig In, we moved fast. Everybody was like, we were trying lots of new things. And one time a person made a recommendation that we did like a 15% off to drive college students into the restaurants. And this person accidentally hit dollars instead of percent. And so I got a call on a Saturday from the store operator. He was like, oh my gosh, I have a line around the block. And it turned out like the Harvard students figured out that they could get $15 out and off in the word had spread. And so the person just like owned it. I made a mistake, turned it off. And my guidance was, how are we changing SOP? So then we said, okay, anytime you put a discount, you have to have a second member of the team double check it. And that was
Yeah.
it. Like, it didn't have to be a big old thing, because I knew that the person's intention was in support of the business. And as long as we learn something from it, we're not making the mistake again, it's fine. And the funny like full circle moment of that is like, yeah, we spent more than we wanted to on the discount line that day. But this
Yeah.
person came with a fun idea on SMS like a couple weeks later, and they sent me a Slack like, oh, I guess this win like made up for my loss. And so that's how I know that like net positive is a team that's willing to
Ah.
quickly and fail fast. You're gonna have wins and losses, but the wins are gonna outweigh the losses every time. That's been my experience.
Yeah, that's that, and that failure, even though it was okay, kind of sat with him or her and influenced some of what they did. Now, I guess where it gets tricky, where it's like you're advocating for guys, you have permission to fail. And at the same time, you're needing to establish what the sandbox barriers are around risk profile because there
Yes.
are some failures. So it's kind of hard because we're saying permission to fail, but
Yeah.
how do you define the but, right? So
Yeah, I think I
hypothetical.
think without that, it you're not setting people up for success if it's just like go wild. But I think ultimately these things all kind of work together. You know, we've got our stated KPIs, and this works best in an environment where we're talking about those ideas and going, here's the thing I think we should do. I don't know, you know, and through collaboration, you're landing in a place where we're all kind of holding hands and going to take this risk. And you know, the example I gave was really kind of more of a mistake, but still it lives in the same culture of more mistakes happen if one of the mandates is we want to move fast. Like we're going to break some eggs in that speed. And so I as a leader need to provide that air cover so that people feel like, okay, as long as
Uh,
what I'm really listening for is the accountability. So what would have been a huge mistake is like trying to hide it or make excuses. But the fact that the person came and said, here's the miss and here's how we'll avoid that mistake next time. It's, you know, that's accountability. What more can you ask for? We're all human. And by the way, at least in the restaurant business, like we're not sending anybody to the moon. We're making bagels, you know? So that kind of keeps it in perspective too.
I love it. You have time for 4 rapid fires?
Oh gosh, sure.
Biggest marketing challenge right now that you're excited about tackling?
My gosh. The age old one of balancing brand building versus sales driving.
Yep. Second one, why do you enjoy and feel fulfilled by what you do? And that's hard in a short answer.
Because nothing thrills me more than when I tell somebody the brand that I serve and their eyes light up and they tell me what that brand does for them in their life.
Interesting. What is still on your vision board in terms of an accomplishment, an achievement, but you haven't realized it yet?
Serving on a board.
Serving on a board. Okay. Last one, Spurs or Knicks?
Oh gosh, I'm such a bandwagon Knicks.
Okay. Well, I wish we had another hour together. And the good news is we have multiple hours together, just not live on the podcast. So
Yeah.
everyone, if you haven't creeped Jessica, she's got a lot of content out there. She represents the definition of how to play this game in its good things and bad things and the way and the mindset around it. So seek her out. She's a very generous. You're a very generous person. Anytime I've ever connected someone with you to just get a little bit of encouragement, you're always there and you always have time somehow. So I appreciate you and thanks for playing this game so well.
I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.